What's up, man? This is just like one of those quarantine ones. I said I was going to put out some videos and stuff, put out some clips, just to tie you guys down for a little bit, give you a little bit of content, and because we don't even know what's happening with rugby, right? We don't know how it's going to go. We don't know how it's going to turn out. I think there's competition still trying to figure out if they can have their finals, which I hope they do. I hope they figure it out. But in terms of the top four, they said it's already cancelled already, so that's a bummer. But this video is not about that. This video is about putting out my top 5 for different positions, right? I'm excited and I hope that they still have I hope that they still have the nationals. I hope they still have the representatives, the rep teams, the New Zealand Barbarians and the New Zealand secondary schools, and so like this is my take on it. These are my takes on it, right? And so I'm just gonna go through some top 5 of players and positions, and then I'll just tell you my top 5 from 1 to 5, and then I'll just talk about different my reasons for it, my reasons for why I like that in those positions, right? These are going to be like really long-winded kind of videos, so hopefully we just get through them quick. So my top 5 loosehead props. My number 1 is Tony Tuffa from Kelston Boys High School. My number 2 is Toby Taylor from Tauranga Boys College. My number 3 is Moses Magoon from Hamilton Boys High School. My number 4 is Steve Salalea from Kings High School. And my 5th one is Richard Snyman from Westlake Boys. The reason why I have it like this is so my first one with Tony Tuffa last year was selected for the Blues under 18s. He did okay, and this was like really his first real year of first 15 rugby. Was last year, so there was a lot of learning that he had to do. He's one of those guys that is raw talent. He's a league boy, but he was one of those guys that had a lot of raw talent. Obviously, his size and his mobility and his running game was what was so appealing. Okay, and even for Kelston Boys, he actually didn't really start a lot of the games, and so it's one of those things, I guess, that where he really just had to go through. He just had to go through what he needed to go through to gain some experience at rugby and to see how it kind of was. So last year, even him getting picked for under 18s was all right. I felt like, yeah, he can pass for that. When he got selected for the New Zealand Barbarians and New Zealand secondary school games, I didn't really agree with it. Just based on the fact that he didn't have a lot of experience. He didn't have, he didn't really know how to scrum properly. He didn't really know how to do a lot of work around the rucks. He did what he thought he could do, but in terms of like sort of just a rugby, a rugby role or position role, he wasn't really completing the role because, frankly, he just didn't really know. He just didn't really know, and he didn't have much experience at it. He just played what he saw, and that was kind of it. Now, I believe that they just picked him more on his raw talent and ability, and then what he could possibly do in the future. And I think that they selected him based on a hunch and based on on potential. And to me, I think that the potential paid off. Because when I've talked about this before, is that when I saw him at the Hastings Kelston preseason game, and I saw how trim he was and how in shape he was, and then I saw him And then, obviously he was playing league at the beginning of the year, and obviously in shape, running, and all that kind of stuff. Really mobile as was, and as he is. And then seeing him against St. Peter's, I thought he was solid, and I seen him in a few more other games after that, and I was thinking, okay, like this has really paid off, and he's learned how to scrum. He knows what he's doing now. His running game is still up there, and then I think he's just transformed himself into the number one loose head prop, and close to the best prop in the country. Obviously a top 5 prop in the country. But for loose heads, I think he's the best prop in the country for loose heads. And Toby Taylor is kind of the same, right? So Toby Taylor from Tauranga Boys came from Aquinas College. I hope I said that right. Probably not, but that's what I think it says or sounds like. So he came from this really small college in Tauranga. And I've known about him since he was year 11. I thought he should have moved faster. I thought he should have moved over earlier. I think the coach now probably has something to do with the reason why he moved over, and I guess he liked the setup now that it is, and I think that he liked the coaches that were in there now, and but his move over there to me was one of the biggest changes for why Tauranga was so good this year. Just his, and he's really similar to Tony Tough in the way that they play and the way that they run the ball, because he's a really big runner. They're even sort of the same kind of size and height and size. And it was funny too, because when Tauranga and Kelson played in the break, both those two guys didn't come on right until the half. After halftime, maybe 10 minutes in, then both of them came on at the same time, almost like they were trying to mirror each other. I don't know whose number was called first, but the way that it looked is that there was like either the coaching staff were going, well, if they put in Tony, then I'll put in Toby. And the other way around, of like, well, if Toby goes in, then I'll put in Tony as well, just to sort of balance it out. And so both of them had a little bit of a game, not much. They didn't have much of a game, but they were both out there. And, seeing those two kind of players, in my mind, if those two were to make New Zealand secondary schools, being able to substitute one for the other and still keep that same momentum, still keep that same running game and that strategy, and with those two kind of players, is a huge advantage for a New Zealand secondary schools. There's a huge advantage for a team that can bring on two players very similar, being able to keep that same energy and keep that same strategy and playmaking ability within that run game from the forwards. To have two players like that is such a massive plus for them. And so I can kind of see New Zealand secondary schools maybe picking some kind of combination like that, And here's the thing also, is that we don't know if Toby's if Tony's going to play rugby or league yet, because he could just go back to league. I think that might even be his first love. But the fact that they have two guys like that, and then Toby is right there and equally and on the same par, I guess, as Tony in terms of position, that's going to be a huge plus. I mean, Toby's been the biggest jumper on the rankings this year, and he's obviously proved it by the way that he's been able to perform for his team as well. So that is, to me, that's just like one of those massive things. It's like, well, to be honest, we as sort of like a First 15 community and fans of First 15 love the fact that a guy like this has come through now, and that we were able to see him a lot this year. Because obviously, Aquinas College is not going to get a lot of attention, and a lot of us probably would have been missed out on seeing him, of like physically seeing him, because their games are hard to come by, really, to be honest. The third one is Moses Magoon. So Moses has jumped up quite a bit. so him and Steve Salalia are the same type of player as well. Sort of like how Tony and Toby is. Steve and Moses Magoon are the same type of player. Height, weight, size, both awesome scrummagers. Both guys that work well around the rucks and the trenches. Really good tight game, and they put in a lot of work as like the supporting act kind of thing. They can truck the ball up, but they're not like these big explosive kind of players like Tony and Toby are. But they're the grinded out kind of players. They'll grind things out and they clean our bodies. They do all that kind of little extra stuff around there. And then when it comes to scrum time, they're going to hold your scrum. Hamilton Boys scrum this year was so good that I'm trying to remember a game where they were consistently beat. Because obviously there'll be games where Hamilton Boys would lose a scrum. Like that's that always happens. But after they lose a scrum, they're pretty much not going to lose another one. That they shouldn't win, and so that's kind of how they were. That's kind of how solid Moses was in his scrumming ability, and so him and Steve are the same type of player. They give you the same effect on the field, and Steve was a New Zealand Barbarian last year. He came out and just did his thing on the field when he played last year, and he took the field. He didn't get a lot of time. I don't remember him getting a lot of time, but obviously he's kept the standard. He's like made himself into a solid guy that you want to watch all the time. I've watched Kings 4 times this year, and being able to see the consistency that he brings, and that's always awesome to have a player like that you know what he's going to give you. And so him and Moses Magoon is kind of like that. And so I've got Moses at 3, and I've got Steve at 4. Rickard Snyman is the last one, and I can't is the number 5 pick. He is kind of like the other two, where he brings a lot of a big run game to your side, but he does this a bit differently because he sort of plays outside the center. Obviously, these are coaches, orders. This is what coaches set up for their players. But him playing out there really puts a mismatch on backlines, a real big mismatch on defenses. But he's fast enough to keep up with the backs that if they're running a move out wide, he's right there with them. Like, he's not going to fall behind. There's not going to be a dramatic slow in pace or anything like that, because he's a really fast guy, quick, really agile and stuff. So that's where he does his big damages out there, is that he makes things. He pretty much just gives you like this real big advantage of making meters once the ball gets into his hands. You've got to actually have a really good defensive center that is a great tackler, or a big winger that can sort of, I guess, hang around him physically until help shows up. And so if you've got big wingers that can sort of target him and then wait for him to get that ball, then hit him on catching the ball, that's probably the best way that you'll take down Rickard and making sure that he doesn't get too much ground. Because to me, he's always going to make some kind of ground. It just depends how much you give him. So if you have big wingers, a lot of these Auckland wingers will probably be good ones to have. Guys like that, or obviously guys from Rotorua Boys who have bigger wingers, like Jericho York, like guys like that. You'd need bigger guys to be able to lock down on him and those kind of situations, especially when he's out wide. And it's not to say he doesn't do work when the rucks come, because when the rucks come, he's in there and he puts his head in there and blows them out. Just those normal kind of South African kind of guys that love getting into that big into that big mess and just putting their head in it and just getting the job done. And so those are my top 5 loose heads, right? It's Tony Toffa from Kelston, Toby Taylor from Tauranga Boys, Moses Magoon from Hamilton Boys, Steve Salalea from King's High School down in Dunedin, not King's College, just for those that get confused sometimes, King's High School in Dunedin, and then Richard Snyman from Westlake Boys. And there were other players that I was thinking of too, because obviously Thomas came from St. Paul's Collegiate, and Conrad Newlands from Whanganui Collegiate as well, who was a year 12. Those two guys were guys that I was looking at for the 5th spot. Those two guys were guys that I was really thinking of because of how well they've done within that CNI competition and being able to raise their games that high. These are my picks for the top 5, and New Zealand secondary schools, when they choose theirs, they always have like a year 12. They always have like these year 12 props come in just to give them more reps and just a bit of taste of what it feels like and stuff like that. And so Conrad Newlands might be that guy. Thomas Kame is also a young year 13 as well, I think, and so he will be. I don't think he'll come back. But I guess he could if he wanted to. But those two players are guys that I was also thinking of for my top 5. Emmanuel Fruin, no, there's no bias in that. I don't even know if we're like related, but he's worked out really well for Shirley Boys this whole year. Really solid, consistent game. And then I had guys like Samuel Foster. I had guys like Dominic Patello as well. Nick Eno is kind of a kid as well that is playing lock, but he's so big and huge. I think he might be more of a prop than anything else. He was one guy I was thinking of. And then obviously I had guys like Sika Uamika as well from St. Peter's College. He's a different one, eh? He's a different one because he's so it's a funny thing with him, and like a lot of people like talk about it too around St. Peter's, about like he's like a prop that thinks he plays number 8, and he takes the biggest run-ups. Like, he's the one dropping back with the fullback to go and run the ball back. And the thing is, like, he does it, and he does it so well. So, like, you can't really go, well, you should be up here, because he makes the meters. He's really good with the ball, and he's got a really good, like, playmaking mind and ability. So, like, you can't really kind of get angry at him. But it's just funny when you see someone drop back, and he's a prop. And he brings it up and he just makes you those meters. And so he's a guy that I'll be looking out for next year, along with Conrad Newlands as well. But then you also got Salesa Siumanufangai as well. He's another one from St. Pat's Town that I really like and I've been watching as well. And obviously because he's with Siale Lawaki, is like you kind of see both of them. And it is obviously like he's learning from the better guy on the team, and so that's kind of what I like about it, is that he's also picked up on a lot of Ciele's I guess mirroring his game kind of thing, and he's actually grown as a player too. Sanele is the other one. Sanele is the other one from Silverstream, St. Pat's Silverstream, who I haven't had in my top 200, but I do see him in a lot of the work that he does, and he's a guy that I've ranked really high for next year as well. And so once next year comes and all these guys are going through, these guys are all the guys that I've kind of been thinking of too, because I always try and think ahead too. And so, you know, even for the battle next year, and these are just the ones that we know that, you know, before they actually have their year 13 jump kind of thing, is that, you know, Coordinator Newlands is one to look out for. Siko Uemaka is another one. Uemika is another one. Salisa Suiman Whanai is another one. And then Senil Sanele is another one. Senele is another one. And like those 4 props, along with, you know, guys like who I've got on my top 5, are just awesome top rated props, and are guys that we could possibly see in the future, no doubt. They're that good, they're that talented, and a lot of these guys will jump straight to you know, club rugby sides, senior club rugby sides, maybe starting or sitting on the bench, but that's how good a lot of these guys are coming through. And so those are my top 5 for loose head props, and I might get the tight heads done today as well, and if not, then there'll be another one tomorrow, because I want to try and get some more content going out, maybe take some minds off this lockdown. But yeah, that's my top 5 for loose head props. Herschel Fraun, peace.